Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming out so bright and early after a concert last night. I don't know about you, but boy, that music, I'll be humming Black Crow music for the next 3 days. So today, we've got a fun-filled, action-packed session. We have 3 presenters, 3 testimonials. We're going to talk about how they leveraged Force.com and how they took paper-based processes and how they used Salesforce's tool set to remove those paper-based processes in a very rapid time frame, impacting their bottom line. So my name is Mike Lopez, and I manage consulting for the Central area. And today, I do want to first do our safe harbor agreement. For those of you who can actually speed read, I encourage all of you to go out to the website and read about our safe harbor agreement. So this is a wonderful industry. It's tremendously talented people, tremendously innovative products. You know, when I go to my physical therapist for my back problems, when I go to a doctor, you know, I place my trust in them because they're so talented, they're so smart, they're so well educated, so experienced. And the products are just amazing. You know, when you look at all the products, it just boggles the mind what comes out of this industry. It's so sophisticated. It's really amazing. But with it is a paradox. You've got incredibly advanced products. You know, we have companies like Zimmer who offers a number of artificial products such as artificial hips. How many of you in this audience know people that have artificial hips or artificial knees? My mother's on her second artificial hip. It's unbelievable the amount of products that are out there. Jay Cutler, quarterback of the Chicago Bears. He's a diabetic, found out last year. Still playing football at halftime. What he does during breaks during the game, he uses a continuous glucose monitoring device, a CGM device, to monitor his blood sugar so that he can continue playing. You know, a product made by companies like Medtronic and Abbott. But with all this sophistication, with all these great products, with all these smart, talented doctors, physical therapists, etc., there's behind the screen, there's these processes, these heavy, heavy paper-based processes that impact all of us. I think we've all seen it. We've all seen what it does to us. We all see the impact. And so today we're going to talk about it. We have testimonies from 3 individuals, 3 people just like you. We have Ryan Smith from Cigna. Ryan's going to tell us how he turned a process for bringing in dentists from a paper-based process, and he leveraged it to bring in dentists as part of his group. And then Vicki Romero is going to tell us how in 1 week, she took a paper-based process for recruiting and bringing in providers, and how she, with results of 133% improvement in contacting providers. And then finally, Dick Eskew, CIO of Rehab Care, is going to tell us how he leveraged the iPhone. He leveraged the iPhone to take a 70-step pre-screening process and use it on the iPhone with improvements of 60%. So I'd like to introduce you to Ryan Smith.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me out here, Mike, to talk about our new process. And what I'm most excited about being in San Francisco is my wife's flying in this weekend, and we're going to take a drive down Lombard Street. And driving's not something we usually agree upon, because I'm usually hearing that I'm going around turns too fast, or that I actually aim for potholes, which we know is not true. And then when she's driving, I'm always telling her what to do and how to drive. But one thing we finally agreed on when it came to driving was she came home from a conference the other night, and one of the speakers shared with her a quote, and it was, "We should not look at challenges as roadblocks, but as road signs." And that's what I'd like to say about our process, is our process wasn't a roadblock. Our paper process was not a roadblock to growing our business. It was a road sign to what, in my opinion, is the best onboarding process in the entire industry. So, and that's what we're here to talk about today. The electronic onboarding process that we developed at Cigna Dental. Cigna, we're a large national health services company. Our primary focus is healthcare. So I'd like to say that we have 11 million healthcare members. I'd like to say those 11 million members more healthy. We have 10 million PPO and HMO members on our dental product. And if I had to describe what we do at dental, so some of my coworkers are here, how many of you go to the dentist, and if you know if your dentist is in or out of network, please raise your hand. Okay, half the crowd. So some of you guys might be spending too much then. But what we do is we go out and we get those dentists and we recruit them into the network so they're in network for you. And what that does is it saves you money. And the last thing that I really like to leave you with when it comes to Cigna Dental and what I'd say we deliver to the customers is there's a connection between oral health and your overall health. And it's a big focus of ours. As long as you have a healthy mouth, it's going to help your entire body be healthy. And a lot of people underestimate that. Okay, but enough about Cigna. Let's talk about Salesforce a little bit. How do we use Salesforce today? Got a lot of bullet points up here, but I can probably boil it down to about 2 things. One is it's a CRM for every single dentist in the nation. So we loaded every dentist, whether we have them contracted or not, into Salesforce.com, and we do outbound call campaigns. And we blitz the market, and we try to get any dentist network price. The second thing we do, and wearing my financial hat is probably the most important to me, is workflow and financial controls. So the approval engine, workflow engine. So what we were able to do is grow our network tremendously in 1 year. But I want to ask this question as well to the audience. How many of you have grown your business or grown your top line but not grown earnings? I know I have before, because we didn't have the right financial controls in place. What we've done with Salesforce is put very tight approval controls in place so that we know every time a dentist is contracted, they're contracted at the right price. So we can really sleep very well at night not worrying about that. And the last thing, and why I'm here today, is to talk about how we took that dentist recruitment, as we're recruiting them into the network for you guys, and it was a paper-based process, and we made it an electronic process. And that's really what we're here to talk about today. So we had some business challenges, or as I called them earlier, road signs, right? The first road sign was we were using 750,000 sheets of paper a year. 750,000, and that's internal only. That doesn't even factor in how many the dentists were printing. They might print 1 to 2 copies off themselves at 30 pages a pop. Okay? So we wanted to go green. 2 is we were killing the dentist and the dental office managers with all the paperwork, 15 to 30 sheets of paper. And this is an actual photo of a dentist after they filled out our paperwork. And the sad news is, after they killed themselves filling out all our paperwork, 40% of them had sent it back to us with something incomplete or inaccurate. What that caused is a 9-day turnaround time. So when we go out and recruit that dentist and get a good discount for our members, that's a good thing, but we still had to wait 9 days to turn it around because things were incomplete, we had to go back and forth, etc. So those were the challenges we were facing. So we wanted to come up with a solution. So as we were looking at the solution, we said there's a certain success criteria we've got to meet here. 1 is we've got to have better accuracy. 2, we've got to have faster activation times so we can get those dentists in our network. And 3, we've got to reduce our need for paper. The other solution that we had in mind is we had to move to e-signature. We were tired of snail mail and fax. It takes too long, it's too inaccurate, and for any of you guys who are working internationally, I can't imagine if you're doing paperwork internationally and if that came back inaccurate, you've got to ship it halfway across the globe again. So, and the last but not least is our e-onboarding tool, or our electronic application, had to only accept completed applications. We don't want it sent half-baked to us. So we wanted to build a website that would force the dentist to do it right the first time, because it would save both of us time and money. So the process, it's a 4-step process. The first one is all of our recruiters are in Salesforce.com. So this is the solution we designed. And I would say it's 4 easy steps. Dentist is in Salesforce, and the dentist says, yeah, I'll sign up with Cigna Dental. And then we say, uh-oh, what do we do now? Actually, it's pretty easy. They just send an email. Go ahead, Mike. They send an email to the dentist. And I'll demonstrate that in a minute here. The dentist fills out all the paperwork on an ACS-hosted website. ACS sends the data back to us, to Cigna, and we use CRM Fusion and upload it back to Salesforce.com. So that process is very seamless, and I already talked about how good our workflows were. So once the data gets back into Salesforce.com using CRM Fusion, then all the workflows automatically kick in for our credentialing and onboarding department. We went from this 10 to 30 sheets of paper, depending on the state. Absolutely ridiculous. To this. Beautiful work of art, I'd like to say. Right, Fred? So, and what I'd like to point out here is there's two fields that are pink. Those highlighted fields mean something's wrong. That points that out to the dentist. And as you'll also see in the top right, there's a list. That's the list of things that the dentist has done incomplete or inaccurate. And we know because that's most of the development work on this was building these interdependencies. So what I'm going to do is a live demonstration of our product. So as I mentioned, the recruiter is in Salesforce.com. So here you see our home screen with the opportunities. So I'm going to click on an opportunity. So this would be a dentist that we're working to recruit, Daniel Scottsko. And go into activity history, and let's just send him a quick email. And again, this is after the dentist has said yes. All the recruiter has to do is select a template. What's wrong with the pop-ups here, Mike? Are you trying to mess with me? So you get the idea. The dentist is going to select a template, right? He said F11. Okay, there we go. So they're just going to select the ACS e-onboarding template and send that email off to the dentist. And this is what the dentist will see. This is a very simple email. It's a link to our website, and it's a pretty obvious website name. Fred came up with this one, actually. It's joinsignadental.com. Pretty common sense, right? So you just click on that link, and it's going to take the dentist to this website here, which I've already logged into. So this is our Join Signa Dental e-application and e-signature website. And I already told you that any field that was highlighted in pink, that means something's wrong. So that's one thing that you look at as a dentist or office manager will look at. Notice the completion percentage here, 95%. That's another thing. See how I cannot proceed to submission right now? That's because it's 95% complete. So the dentist, this is an overview here. Dentist or office manager can scroll down and see if there's any fields highlighted in pink. Uh-oh, and there we see something. We make sure that our dentists have malpractice insurance or professional liability insurance of at least $100,000. This dentist typed in $10,000. Probably a typo, but at least we pointed it out to them before they sent it to us and before we had to pen it and go back and forth. So I'm just going in here and edit this. And that is under professional info. As you can see, we've broken the application up into 5 or 6 easy steps. Professional info. And off to the right, I promise you guys, there would be a list off to the right of anything I did wrong, right? Dentist can just click on that, takes them right down there. 10,000. Let's say that was just a typo. Let's make that 100,000. And the same for the next field. And we're all set. If I had done it wrong, it would have given me an error message. So I've just demonstrated to you how we forced the application to be accurate and complete. One other thing, I don't know if you guys are also in the insurance field, but we have to do what's called primary source verification. So we need a copy of the dentist's license, specialty certificate, etc., to make sure that they are who they said they were, as Dennis Green once said. So here's the ability, again, I said that we didn't want anything mailed to us. Here's the ability for the dentist to scan or upload their license to us. Again, saving paper, time, and money. So what I'm doing, I'm going into, it's a scan wizard and also the ability to just browse and upload any document from your computer. And I'm checking out this doctor's professional liability coverage. So you see here, there's a drop-down of any document they can upload to us, the license, liability coverage, anesthesia certificate, etc. And then here is what they uploaded as their $1 million professional liability coverage. And that's when you're all supposed to say, "Aw." Okay? So after they upload all the documents, they're all set, right? Very top of the website, common sense, save for later, or proceed to submission. See, now I can click on proceed to submission because it's 100% complete now. So we're going to proceed to submission. So we've solved for mailing documents to us in incomplete applications or errors. Just going to select yes. And what we're going into now, proceed to submission really means e-sign the document. For those of you that are scared of e-signature, don't worry, we were too. There was a law passed in 2001 that stated, it was called the E-Sign Act, that an electronic signature is just as valid as a paper signature as long as you go through the right validation process. So if you're afraid of that, don't be. Law was passed that covers us there. And I am Dr. Ryan Smith. I'm just going to e-sign my name. And oh, by the way, if they e-sign the wrong name, we have checks and balances there because we found out that we had the office managers e-signing the dentist name. So we put a checks and balance there. And here's another important thing to point out. I live in North Carolina. One of the errors we had is a lot of dentists were sending us back the wrong contract. They would send us back a generic one if we needed state-specific, or a California contract if they used to work in an office there and had migrated over to Nevada. So we had a lot of issues with wrong contracts being sent. What happened here is when I entered the North Carolina as my office information, we automatically pushed the North Carolina contract to the dentist. Again, saving time and money because we had about 10% of contracts being sent in wrong. So as you can see, I have just signed my life away. So a couple things are going to happen after I sign my life away like that. I'm going to get an email. And this is an example from another demonstration. As you can see here, it says, Dear Testing, thank you for electing to join the Cigna Dental Network via the Cigna credentialing website, etc., right? This will happen within minutes of e-signing the document. And what's cool about this, what used to come in via paper has now been converted to an electronic document with all the information I entered on the website. And I'm just going to scroll down here to the meat and potatoes. That's not my brother or cousin or my alter ego. That's actually one of my coworkers. User web application e-signature. So here's proof that Brent Smith signed this contract on June 30th at 5:08 p.m. Magic. And most importantly, because I know you guys are all about closing deals, right? Close ratios. We have a signed contract, which is really the meat and potatoes. And your ability to close a deal within a half an hour instead of weeks. Because we now have a signed contract by Brent Smith. Okay, so let's get back to the PowerPoint presentation and talk about what this did for us. I promised you a certain success criteria. So, do we have better accuracy? Yes, I just proved to you that the dentist cannot fill out the website wrong. Do we have faster activation times? 33% faster already, and it's going to improve. We went from 9-day turnaround time to 6. That may not seem like a lot. That 3 days is worth a lot in the healthcare industry because we negotiate discounts with providers. The faster we get them in the network, the more money we save our clients. Those 3 days are worth $791,000 to us in claim savings. And $200,000 in staff savings because we don't need people pushing a lot of paper around anymore. Dentists, so that's our customer, right? One of our customers. They're giving feedback to us that it's taking them 15 to 30 minutes from end to end, whereas it used to take them at least 2 hours and sometimes weeks between all the back and forth. Dentists that use this process, no more paper. So it's a thing of beauty. We are going green with the Moscone Center. So enough about me. I want to just leave you with a few key takeaways. One is pretty obvious, right? Go to Dreamforce and get ideas. You're here. That's kind of a dumb statement, right? But no, honestly, Fred's one of my coworkers, we were sitting here last year, 12 months ago, gathering ideas for e-onboarding. And 12 months later, I'm up here talking to you about how we're going to save up to $1 million after rolling out this process that quick. And we got all the ideas here at Dreamforce. 2, Explore App Exchange. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of ideas prepackaged. EchoSign is an e-sign partner that has a lot of capabilities right out of the box. 3, have an open mind. And this is something that I think is greatly underestimated because all of us are working with processes that are 10, sometimes 20 years old. Forget how things were done and think about how they could be. Re-engineer the whole process from the start, if it makes sense. And that's what we've done, and it's saved us a lot of time and resources. The next one, get business owners involved early. You don't want to design everything in a vacuum without the end user in mind. Get the end users involved early and get it designed right the first time. It makes a lot of sense, and it'll save you a lot of back and forth. Last but not least, don't forget you have to change behavior. Mark Benioff talked for hours yesterday about how easy it is to change the process, right? We can change things rapidly, develop new applications, rapid deployment. But you can't change behavior rapidly. And one tip that I would share with you on that is what we've done is we've embedded the processes of our business so deep into Salesforce that the recruiters can't get their job done without using Salesforce. Because my department, which does the intake and the application, they don't do any work on it unless they see it in Salesforce. And that's one way that we've changed behavior very successfully. So that's all I have for you today. And in conclusion, what I'd just like to ask you as you're at Dreamforce, as you're listening to these takeaways, is where are the road signs of your business pointing you? Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Good job.
Good morning. My name is Vicki Romero, and I'm with Schumacher Group based out of Lafayette, Louisiana. It's interesting to hear Ryan's story because they're in the dental business and we're in the emergency medicine business, and we have very similar obstacles and have come up with very similar solutions. And it's interesting to sit next to someone who was here last year and actually heard my boss speak and said, after that speech, I went out and said we could do anything with the platform. And that's the truth. If you look at Schumacher Group's implementation of Force.com, we've really stretched it to the limits. We don't do sales. We're an emergency medicine management company. However, we use Salesforce to do all of our business operations. So it's interesting to hear Ryan's speech. So what is Schumacher Group? Schumacher Group is an emergency medicine management company. What that means is hospitals will outsource their emergency department to companies, hopefully Schumacher Group. We manage everything from physician staffing to credentialing, contracting, scheduling, and payment of those physicians. We are the third largest emergency medicine management in the company, in the world. We employ 750 employees, and we hope to have an impact on over 3 million patients per year. So how do we use Salesforce? I kind of touched on it a bit. We use Salesforce as our operational database. We went from a legacy system in 2006, which is an on-premise application, and we moved that to the cloud. All of our operations, our core functions are recruiting, credentialing, and scheduling. That's the core of our business, is to get those doctors recruited, scheduled, and credentialed as fast as we can. Contracts can start up in a minimum of 30 days, so we need to get this process done as quickly and efficiently as possible. Salesforce handles 2 of those functions, the recruiting and the credentialing. Salesforce.com also serves as our system of record. It's our master record for our provider information and our facility information. So everything about the provider, where he lives, his pay rate, all his credentials, his contracts, all of that is stored in Salesforce, as well as the facility. So we have a contract with a local hospital, and all of that information is stored in Salesforce as well. Those key master records will service all of our other on-premise or cloud applications for integration. So how do we do this? We implement workflows, web-to-lead forms, console apps to streamline all of our processes. These are things that are out of the box, which is why we were so efficient in getting this process paperless. So what were the business challenges? We, like Cigna Dental, had reams of paper. an abbreviated packet was literally this thick of paper. And that was abbreviated. We had lots of leads and information floating around. We were buying lists and uploading them. We had paper processes. We didn't have the ability to track a lead. And the lead, in this case, I'm referring to as a provider. Emergency medicine is a really unique business because there's only a small pool of providers that you can grab from. There are a lot of family practice physicians. Emergency medicine's a bit different. We had a lot of multiple leads. We were unable to track. We had ineffective performance and basically too much paper. So I'll take a step back and show you maybe the life of a provider. So a provider decides that he wants to come and work for Schumacher Group, or he met a recruiter. Any which way he was interacted with us, he can come to the Schumacher Group website, and this is our online application. This is actually a web-to-lead form. It was very easy to build because all of these fields are in Salesforce. As I said, it was the system of record, so all of this information is about the provider. So he can come to the Schumacher Group website, complete an application, and upon submission, it creates a lead in Salesforce immediately. From there, you can go to the next slide. Again, here's just another example of a web-to-lead form. He can go to a natural job opportunity. Doris Kirkland is the recruiter. He can submit his information here. Hit submit. Again, that's a web-to-lead form. It's immediate. So here's our process. We have multiple lead sources. So we buy lists. We have data entry. We have website forms, and our online application. Those all get submitted immediately as a lead in Salesforce. From there, we have a group in Chattanooga that is called our RRC. It's our Recruiting Resource Center, and they are provider locators there. And what their job is to get on the phone and call these providers or these leads and see if they're interested. Give them some information about Schumacher Group, see what their pulse is. Do they want a job with us? The lead assignment here, it goes to a manager, Dan. Dan gets all of these leads, and he decides based on geographic location, maybe physician specialty, who is the provider locator that's going to contact that provider initially. The provider locator works off of a console application, and they actually get, using Salesforce workflow, a lead assigned to them. We've implemented CTI and console applications, so from their desk, they can click to dial the provider. All of that information is logged in Salesforce as activities. They can type notes immediately. And they're working from one screen, so there's no toggling back and forth between tabs at the top. If you've never taken advantage of the console application, this is a really good reason to. From there, they decide yes or no. Should we pursue this lead or not? If they decide yes, we use Salesforce approval process to route that lead back to the manager, who then reviews this information. Maybe something looks funny where we need to maybe give them another call. If they decide to approve it, we use Salesforce again. This is all automated, no paper, to convert that lead to a contact. When the lead is converted to a contact, it's handed off to a recruiter as a good potential hot lead. This is the screen that I was referring to earlier that the provider locators work from. You can see on the left panel, this is the CTI. If you've never seen it, it's a really great application. It's integrated directly with Salesforce and your Cisco phone. Here is the task that was assigned to the recruiter or to the provider locator to call a particular provider. And at the top is all of the providers that are assigned to that lead. So from one screen, they can click, dial, log notes, and route information back to the manager. So what was the solution? A fellow employee of mine and I went to Chattanooga, and when we sat down, we looked at the provider locators, and they were literally taking pieces of paper that were printed from lists with a highlighter and a pen, and they were highlighting through their call list. And then they would open Salesforce and write the information down, and then highlight, and then pick up the phone and call, then log notes. It was amazing. And the recruiting manager took these lists and would put them in Excel, and he would divide them up, and he would hand out list A, list B, list C. There could have been duplicates. People could have been calling the same lead multiple times. There was no tracking of information at all. And so I asked the question, well, how do you know if person A and person B are calling the same provider? Well, I don't. Well, because it's paper. And so they would highlight, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, Salesforce can do all of this for you. And so we stepped away, and we went back to our hotel rooms, and literally within a few days, we had come up with a solution. We implemented it, and we changed their behavior. What was that solution? It was all out-of-the-box things. I was a recent developer. I'm now a director, but I didn't do any code here. This was all out-of-the-box functionality with Salesforce. Web-to-lead forms, console application, CTI, and Salesforce workflow and approval processes. So what were the results? A staggering 133 performance improvement. Really, 133% performance improvement. When I flew back to Lafayette, the recruiting manager called a few weeks later and said, Vicki, it's amazing. I mean, we went from calling, maybe 10 or 12 leads a day to hundreds. What does that mean? That means money. That means time saving. That means efficiency. That means you're getting good, qualified providers to come and work for you. Again, what were results? Cleaner, qualified leads and recruits. That led to potential providers. I don't know how many of you are in this business, but providers are our customers. We don't want to call them 5 times in one day from different people, asking for different information or giving them a different pitch. We want to get one good contact and nurture that relationship. And by automating these processes in Salesforce, we were able to track that activity on the lead and on the provider, so we could know, well, so-and-so just called him a week ago. I'm going to give it a little time and then maybe call next week. Reporting capabilities. We're now able to report on how many of those leads are coming in, from which website, which web source are they coming from? Are they coming in from lists that we buy? Once they come in, what's the conversion rate from a lead to a contact? Who are the provider locators that are doing the really good job of making this conversion? And performance tracking on the provider locators activity. So they were using paper and highlighters. It was really hard to track if they really had made the call or if they were just speed dialing. But using CTI in the console application, we could actually see that call being made and all the notes that were logged on the lead record. So some key takeaways. Mine are similar to Ryan's. I'm a business analyst by nature, so when we flew out to Chattanooga, the one thing we were concerned about was not taking a paper process and automating that. You don't want to just make really bad processes fast, because that's not important. What's important is to make an efficient process and an effective process. So when you look at paper processes in your company, take a step back and see where you can eliminate some of these steps. Redesign the process and then automate that. Remove all paper where possible. A lot of us still use paper to write notes. We still hang on to the paper because we feel like that's our comfort zone. Remove it. It's fine to go electronic. And prepare for change management. As Ryan said earlier, a lot of people are used to that process, and they feel that if you automate it, maybe you're getting rid of their job, or you're just trying to take away their steps, and that, well, if it doesn't take me 8 hours to do it and it only takes me 4, what am I going to do for the other 4 hours? Call more people. So prepare for that change management. That's an important key takeaway when you're going paperless. And that's it.
Thank you, Dick. Now we have Dick Eskew, CIO of Rehab Care. Dick?
All right, thanks. We'll go ahead and go to the next slide. They've got us on a tight clock up here, so I'm watching the time. The quick story about Rehab Care is right up here. Similar to these other folks, people hire us when skilled nursing facilities, hospitals hire us to manage and deliver therapy services. We also, one other division is where we actually own and operate the hospitals. But what I'm going to talk about today really applies in the area of where people have outsourced therapy services to us. But that gives you an idea of our size and the particular, our experience with Salesforce started initially where our sales department became a Salesforce automation customer. And so we can go to the next slide. And so that led me to come to this conference last year and actually sat in a presentation, Vicky's boss, where he talked about how the Schumacher Group was using Force.com. And I came out here particularly curious about this platform as a service thing. I didn't quite get it just by reading about it. So I wanted to listen to some presentations. So Schumacher Group presented, and another company called Job Science was presenting. And Job Science is a software vendor, and so they've written their entire application that they market and sell in Force.com platform. So I'm getting the impression, well, it must be a pretty flexible, pretty robust platform if a software vendor's based their entire product on it. And, of course, the story that Schumacher Group was telling was pretty impressive. So coincidentally, what was going on back in St. Louis, prior to me coming out here, was we'd been challenged with a particular problem by our CEO, and one of our operational leaders had recognized that an important paper-based process called a pre-admission screen was taking way too long, and we were losing good referrals because our process was taking longer than our competitors. And it's a very important process, and I won't go into too much detail on it, but when somebody is discharged from an acute care setting to a post-acute setting, it's very important that they get in the right setting of care, clinically and financially. It's important for everybody. And so this screening process is set up to make sure that happens, and that if somebody's sending us a referral, that we really check into it, make sure that this is a good referral. This is the right setting of care they should come into. Because if you don't, they're not going to get the right care, and the provider may not get reimbursed either. So it was a paper-based process that was initiated by an individual who then had to fax this paper form to two other individuals, a medical director and what we call a program director, for their review. So you can see all the problems there. People need to be in their office. They need to be near a fax machine. Everything that you can imagine, legibility issues, maybe not filled out correctly. And so the challenge was, or the directive was, automate this and make it mobile. I don't want anybody to have to be tied to a desk or anywhere near a fax machine. And honestly, actually, he didn't say make it mobile. He said put it on an iPhone, because he was one of the first people to go, this is the best user interface I've ever seen, and I want it on an iPhone. We had no idea how to write an iPhone app at all, none whatsoever. And so that was going on back at home. I came out here to this conference, and I heard some Force.com stories that were very impressive. And so I'm probably not following the slides at all, but I literally called back to St. Louis and told the guys that were working on it, on a .NET version of creating this form, stop what you're doing. Why don't you go out to the Force.com website. I heard they've got a developer toolkit you can download for free. So why don't you do that and play with it, and then we'll talk when I get back next week. And quite honestly, when I got back in the office on Monday the following week, they hadn't developed the entire form with drop-down menus and everything, but they had the form on an iPhone. Okay, I'm impressed. It's like, that's pretty good. And they were sheepish about it because these were .NET guys, and they were kind of going, well, we could have done a lot more of this, or I could have customized that. And I'm like, but this was 2 days ago, guys, unless you stayed up and worked all weekend. And then, no, we didn't do that, So it was very impressive. So that was enough. We saw enough right there. And that's an important point. So we didn't write a native iPhone app, and that's great because in some of our markets, AT&T coverage is terrible. And so literally it's just a configuration. It's a click of a button, say, okay, I'm actually going to run this on a BlackBerry. Done. We don't rewrite the app. So this is just, it was great. So we went back and really sat down and said, okay, full-blown, create all the drop-down menus, create the workflow. we were nervous. We were going, because we weren't trained in Apex or anything. So we're just like, so we asked Salesforce to give us a little consulting help. So 3 days of consulting help from Salesforce. And 2 weeks later or less, we had the full-blown form, all the drop-downs, and like everybody said, what all the benefits you get by getting this automated and off of paper, and then the workflow behind it. So you complete the form, you hit the button, it goes to other people. Now the clock's ticking because we're going to go, okay, we want to make sure these people, we know they've got an email. So what's taking you so long? An hour's gone by. Why haven't you blessed this referral or denied it for some reason? And so we have the ability to actually manage the process. And so I just wanted to show some screenshots for those of you that are familiar with an iPhone. You can see, so like I've said before, we didn't have to program any of this. We just told the application we're running it on an iPhone, and it just takes advantage of the user interface. It's really been interesting. I'll go back kind of to talk about from that IT or that programmer's perspective. They were almost embarrassed by this because the guy became a hero. He really did. It's like everybody would go, "Alan, you're amazing." And he's like, "I didn't really do anything." and this is a guy who's worked on really hard projects, that a lot of time, a lot of money, complicated stuff, and really get no recognition for it. And he's a hero for this, and he's going, you guys, you don't get it. It's like I really didn't do that much, and it's quite the irony. And I thought about bringing that up because that's some of the questions people ask. That somehow they see these things as a threat, that IT is threatened by these types of approaches. IT gets threatened by outsourcing solutions, even if you're just talking about the data center or outsourcing your infrastructure. Well, this is a threat to these programming guys. Yet the programming guy became a bigger hero, if you will, because time to value is phenomenal. And this has changed things. This has changed the mindset of our entire company about IT, quite frankly. We delivered a phenomenal solution on an iPhone in less than 2 weeks. And it's like, people are going, if you can do that, then all these ideas we've had before that we just didn't give any, we just said, well, that's just going to take too long. It's going to cost too much money. We don't know if we'll get a result. Now, nobody thinks that way anymore. They're like, so now we have the other problem, right? We got a million great ideas coming at us, but that's a better problem to have. So that's some of the results. We don't even have it fully deployed yet, but we've got several hundred people on it. The admissions are up. The quality of the admissions are better. A thing that always comes up in healthcare, because there is protected health information involved in this, so the encryption. This has been a compliment to Salesforce. Initially the encryption was not on the Salesforce side. Salesforce, like a lot of software vendors, said, well, that's handled at the device. Well, a lot of you may know that the iPhone encryption is not that great. Techies, I can jailbreak that in 5 minutes. Okay, whatever that means, I believe you. But it is true, you can. It's not that great. And so Salesforce has worked with us and has addressed that. So we actually have a beta version of some code from Salesforce right now where the encryption is being applied at the database level. So in case that might be in somebody's mind, it usually is. That is, I believe that has been solved and is going to be released to everybody in a couple of months or less. Is there another slide? Let's see. So I think I've hit all that. I was here last year, impressed with what I was hearing, so now I'm sharing my story with some of the people I heard their story from, and we're going to the next level now. We've actually started working with some partners of Salesforce to actually lay out, I won't call it a strategic plan of, here are IT products and services that we can develop in the very near term. I know something that I wanted to bring up earlier. We did this so quickly. This was a question somebody asked me yesterday, And as IT folks, a lot of you will know, sometimes you do something too quickly, you overlook things. And we got into deploying this after a couple of months and realized, in retrospect, if we had taken a little more time on the front end, done some more analysis, we would have thought of this important thing that was relative to using some CPT code standards and stuff like that, so that we could just then click a button and have an interface to our host system. And I was lamenting that to our CEO, going, I wish we'd taken a little more time up front. And he just blew it off. He's like, for 6 months now, we've been getting nothing but value out of this. Admissions are up, so don't beat yourself up on this oversight. And quite frankly, if we need to, we can rewrite the app, and it won't take that long. So it's just changes. It has changed our company's perspective. It's changed IT's perspective on development. When you can deliver a product, time to value like that, it's very, very exciting, very powerful for us. I think that's it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Dick. We're going to open up to questions in a minute. Just a couple things. Consistent messages I heard from all three of you was, one, look at your processes with an open mind. Almost take a blank sheet of paper and figure out how to almost start from scratch with the goal of making it more automated, more value, eliminating paper, the theme of the presentation, but also leveraging Force.com, clicks, not code. We have the coding capability, but in many situations, you can just leverage the out-of-the-box tool set without getting into the programming aspects of it. And then finally, it's not just on the screen, like a screen like this. It can also be used on mobile devices like an iPhone. Okay? So before I open up the Q&A, appreciate it if you would complete our online survey. So it would be great if you do that. Let us your feedback helps us improve these sessions next year. I can tell you that as a session lead, what I will receive is your surveys of feedback with ratings and suggestions, and then I will take it with our overall track leader and how we can improve this and make it more valuable to you in the future. And then finally, before we go to Q&A, once we're done with questions, we are handing out a iPod Touch to a lucky person here. We'll be raffling off at the end of our question session. So thank you. So if you have a question, if you could, please step up to the microphone and ask. No questions? You have?
I don't think I can mind.
Okay.
No, usually don't need one.
Tickets for you. I am fascinated by, and already my brain's screaming for solutions like the one that you've created. And my colleagues here are probably saying, oh no. Uh-oh, we have to have it done by Monday. But because that's the standard that you set now, you know that, right? So who are your users in this instance specifically, and have they adopted the mobile technology that they need in order to make this successful for you? And is that where that 3% is coming from? So is your universe of possibilities even larger than what you might have assumed in the first place? So lots of questions.
For the benefit of the rest of the audience, as well as this is being viewed, if I could just repeat the question. So your question is, who are the users, and do they have the benefit? Do they have the benefit of leveraging this technology?
Yeah. So who are the users, and have they adopted the technology?
And have they adopted?
Right. So are they, iPhone and BlackBerry users mostly, or is your company servicing, doing the opportunity based on hospital-based services, and typically those folks are not all that automated.
Okay. I think practically every one of these people was probably a BlackBerry user. If they didn't have a BlackBerry, then they had a typical cell phone. And so there was a lot of the initial, there were people that were like, I can't do a form on an iPhone. That just didn't stand up. And quite frankly, management at Rehab Care just said, we're not accepting that. You're going to use it. And so all that noise, it went away very quickly. I mean, if it had really turned out to be that bad, the noise would not have gone away. It was like, no, you're going to do it. And then we went through everything with, well, I have long fingernails. It just hasn't panned out to be an issue whatsoever. And so the iPhone, actually, we had doctors. So the users are there's three users, if you will. It's the person who's going to gather that information that either meets with the family, the patient, or that discharge planner and gathers this information. So they've got their device, they just start completing the form while they're interviewing the person. The email then goes from, a Salesforce email goes to a medical director and a program director who are there at that facility, who are tasked with, among other things, making sure that this is a good referral for this facility. And so that's a physician in that case, a medical director, who, and this was a great story, one of our early users, this guy, I may not remember this entirely now, he had a BlackBerry, he had a cell phone, and he had an iPac, because he ran Epocrates on the iPac. The BlackBerry was something, the cell phone was his personal phone, and the BlackBerry was something the company provided. And he's like, I am not carrying a fourth device. And so we said, wait a minute, I know there's got to be an iPhone version of Epocrates. Download it. Okay, now that's there. We'll give you your phone number. That's just not an issue. I mean, he carries an iPhone now, and he runs everything he needs. So it's worked very nicely.
Have you ever considered distributing devices for those that don't have it because your savings is so great?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, we do that, yes. Yeah, I didn't say that. That's how we do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Next question, if you could step up to the microphone.
So my question is, when you said the credentials, do you do background checks as well so that you have it coordinated with other companies that are doing background checks, and that's all automated?
We do background checks, but it's not automated. I mean, there's a phone call that's made, but the whole credentialing is done through Salesforce.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
At Cigna, with our credentialing department, we do NPDB, National Practitioner Data Bank. And what we're working on now is we have all the data, and we have people going to the National Practitioner Database to do the research and the poll. What we're working on now is an electronic feed to them and get a feedback and automate that process, if that helps you out. So once we have the data digitally, let's send them out to the primary sources and get the data back digitally.
Okay. Great. Next question.
Sorry. Vicki, for you, you mentioned that you were a developer before.
Yes.
So how did you get turned on to the whole, or how did your organization get turned on to Salesforce in the first place?
Well, I was a .NET developer, and then I have a degree in business systems analysis and technology, and I did .NET development. And then my boss, if you know his pictures around here, he's a huge cloud advocate. And so we purchased Salesforce.com, and then I was promoted to Web Services Director. So anything that opens up in a browser falls under my department. So our internet, our physician portal, Salesforce.com. And so being a past developer and seeing the capabilities with the platform, I can relate to some of the hesitation, but really it's the place to be.
Your show, your dance.
Sorry, it's
No.
really it's fascinating, right? So my question for all three of you, just off the top of your head, what would you say are broader opportunities for using cloud computing in the healthcare industry, and where do you hope to take this next?
So just repeat, what are broader opportunities in the healthcare industry to take Force.com to the next level within your organizations?
They're endless, I can honestly say. Leaving, even just what I learned yesterday, we have a Facebook page. You know, Schumacher Group has a Facebook page. We were there with the social networking. The healthcare industry, and especially the industry that we're in with providers, there's a lot of gray area around our competition and how much we really want to expose ourselves, and then how much you can really go paperless, because some of our applications still require a provider to sign a signature in blue ink. You know, so we have to mail out blue ink pens with some of that information. So, you know, there's some areas where we can't automate there's a lot of areas besides this that we have gone paperless, and there's so much more to go.
So can we get the regulators body to this?
I would hope so. And the e-signature, you know, we are exploring. We actually have EchoSign and another product, DocuSign. DocuSign pushes the field back into Salesforce, Conga. I mean, there's things you can use to automate these processes out of the box. And we have so much more to do. So, I saw Ryan's process, and we do credentialing, and we have an automated process, but we haven't gone there, so I'm asking, want to ask questions there. So I think there's plenty more that we can do.
Okay. Ryan, how about yourself?
Yeah, two main areas, Julie, that I would say are possibilities for the healthcare partnering with Force.com. One is records management, which is one of the biggest issues today is I've got my records at one doctor and another doctor, and they're all on paper. How the heck do I get them? So let's move those to one centralized environment where doctors and patients have access to the records easily. The second is service. So, and we've talked a lot about this, and ideas are just piling up in my head after seeing the demonstrations yesterday on how can we get better service to members and providers, whether they be dentists or doctors. So not just microsites or the ability to just push questions to us. All the questions today, for the most part, come in via the phone. Why is that? Why can't we answer doctors, office managers, and patients' questions through chat, Facebook, Twitter, or how many times are we answering the same question over and over, and we need to just publish that in an online environment? So those are the two areas I'd say.
Great. And Dick?
I would just hit on the cloud is, I think, fantastic for healthcare. We run into, so this is a tactical issue, if you will. Some of our clients are hospitals, and their IT department does not want us bringing any computer equipment in. So we provide solutions now whenever we use a Salesforce-based solution. All we need is internet access. Or if you're a physician's office or a nursing home, or lots of healthcare organizations are small to medium sized. They don't have an IT department, and they can't put in a solution that requires you to have IT resources, cloud-based solutions. You don't need a computer room. You don't need servers. You don't need anything. You just need internet access, and you can have world-class applications to run your business with.
Great, thank you. We have time for one more question. Yes, sir.
So you moved patient data to the cloud. Can you speak a little bit to the risk assessment you did before doing that and how you deal with your auditors?
Okay.
So either one, any of us?
All of
or-
us?
Yeah.
So just to repeat the question for our presenters, for those of you when you moved it to the web, how did that impact the auditors?
Yeah.
What types of process?
We are privately owned, so we didn't have really any auditors coming in. I mean, we looked at the paper processes and really their behavior, what they were doing. The information, they were using Salesforce as a data store instead of the process and using the workflow. And so really when we took the paper to the cloud, it was really just removing it from their processes. Because in the end all, the data was stored in Salesforce, not all of it, but the provider information was still being keyed into Salesforce. They were just writing it down and then keying it in instead of just doing it while they were on the phone with the provider.
I think what he's getting to is the fact that, just for numbers, all the information is now in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
That's an issue. So when we talk about data source, Salesforce is a data source.
Yeah.
Black cloud for that. So what did you do about that? Is that part of the encryption that you did?
Sorry, can
I
you?
will say that we have a compliance department who took this very seriously and basically challenged, if you will, or required asked the same questions of Salesforce that they asked of the IT department. Do you do this? Do you do this? Just step it down. And in our case, what we run into, because we're in 43 states, is that the states take it. Many states take the HIPAA compliance further than the national standards, and so we have to take the worst state, if you will, for HIPAA compliance and meet those standards. And we have to be able to respond back in writing to those clients if they ask, answer all these questions and tell us that you do this. And so, again, our compliance department worked directly with Salesforce to go through it. Do you do this? Can you say that you meet this level of encryption? And actually address that from the mobility side, because that's where a lot of people really get hung up. They instantly see an iPhone and they go, oh, you can't do that. You can't bring that in here. And so we run into all those types of things.
Our compliance.
And I'll say one last thing. This is so not everybody will share this opinion necessarily, but can I really do it better than Salesforce? Can I do security better than they can? Can I do it better than Google can? With all the resources they have dedicated full time to one particular issue, where I'm lucky if I'm one deep sometimes in these types of things. That's how we looked at it as well.
Yes, we have a compliance department as well, and they're actually in Salesforce. They do their contracting. We do our contracting in Salesforce. So.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming. And now for the drummer, I also want to extend a big thank you to the speakers who do all their hard work. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Dick.